United Centers for Spiritual Living. Practitioners of the United Centers for Spiritual Living, graduating practitioners from the Global Heart Online Education. The graduating practitioners from Seaside Center for Spiritual Living. Graduating practitioners from Palm Springs Center for Spiritual Living. Graduating practitioners from Corazon Global, Tijuana, Mexico. Graduating practitioners from Orange County Center for Spiritual Living. Graduating practitioners from the Center for Creative and Conscious Living, Cypress, California. You are the voice of spirit on earth. Graduating practitioners from San Diego Center for Spiritual Living. Graduating practitioners from Vision, a Center for Spiritual Living. Graduating practitioners from Universal Spirit Center, a global heart community. Master practitioner graduate from Seaside Center for Spiritual Living. Master practitioner graduates from Palm Springs Center for Spiritual Living. Ministerial students from the Holmes Institute, San Diego Regional Center. The ministers of the United Centers for Spiritual Living. Reverend Kevin Busey, founding minister, Universal Spirit Center, San Diego. Reverend Patty Paris, senior minister, Vision, a Center for Spiritual Living. Reverend Karen Rice, assistant minister, Sanctuary for Spiritual Living, Covina, California. Reverend Tammy Miller, associate minister and executive director, Seaside Center for Spiritual Living. Reverend Sandy Moore, founding minister, Center for Spiritual Living, Orange County. Reverend Dr. Roger Julien, retired minister, Center for Spiritual Living, Orange County. Reverend Alice Bandy, Encinitas, California. Reverend Dr. Linda McNamara, minister, Center for Spiritual Living, Laguna Woods. Reverend Dr. Michael Carney, community spiritual leader, Center for Spiritual Living, Palm Springs. Reverend Diane Hogan, senior minister, Center for Creative and Conscious Living. Reverend Dr. Christina Tillotson, distance education dean, Holmes Institute, United Center for Spiritual Living. Reverend John Pileski, Senior Minister, San Diego Center for Spiritual Living in the heart of downtown.
You are the face.
Reverend Sarah Hans, Director of Education and Pastoral Care, Universal Spirit Center. Reverend Donald Graves, Spiritual Leader, Tucson Center for Spiritual Living. Reverend Suzette Wehunt, Founding Minister, Holmes Spiritual Center, Mission Valley. Reverend Dr. Roxy Hart, Founding Minister, Shiloh Spiritual Center, San Diego. Reverend Annie McCary, Staff Minister, Center for Creative and Conscious Living, Cypress, California. Reverend Doris Avery, Member, Center for Creative and Conscious Living, Cypress, California. Reverend Patricia King, Founding Spiritual Leader, Center for Inspirational Living, Long Beach. Reverend Jan Ewing, Salt Lake Center for Spiritual Living. Reverend Terry Scott, Minister, Desert Springs Center for Spiritual Living, Palm Springs. Reverend Lori Adams, Minister at Large. Reverend Diane Naki, Minister of Congregate Care, Seaside Center for Spiritual Living. Reverend Irma Forward, Senior Minister, Light of Life, Rancho Bernardo. Reverend David Fears, Community Spiritual Leader, Sangha Center for Spiritual Living, Huntington Beach, California. Reverend Fran Lascota Christ, Artistic Director, Seaside Center for Spiritual Living. Reverend Guy Williams, Senior Minister, Hilltop Center for Spiritual Living, Fallbrook, California. Reverend Beverly Lee Branham, Assistant Minister, Center for Spiritual Living, Palm Springs. Reverend Kirk Moore, Co-Minister, Musical Director, Center of Spiritual Living, Orange County. Dr. Reverend William Larkin, National Core Council, Center for Spiritual Living, Palm Springs, California. Reverend Frank Maitoza, Senior Minister, Menifee, Sun City, California. Reverend Dr. Gordon Bishop, Founding Minister, San Diego Center for Spiritual Living. Reverend Catherine Economo, Dean, Holmes Institute, San Diego Regional Center, Seaside Center for Spiritual Living. Reverend Dr. Christian Sorensen, Spiritual Leader of Seaside Center for Spiritual Living, Encinitas, and Director of the Holmes Institute, San Diego. Reverend Dr. Kathy Hearn, Community Spiritual Leader, United Centers for Spiritual Living.